My name is Eric Barbie. I'm the Public Affairs Officer at U.S. Embassy Algiers, and I'm very, very pleased to moderate this Q&A session with Ambassador John Derocher and Karen Rose. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about these presentations. They're led by the American Cultural Center in Algiers. We also have American Cultural Centers in Oran, Constantine, Ouargla, and Bashar. So I encourage you, once we get back to normal, once we get through this pandemic, these spaces are going to reopen, and they present great spaces and opportunities for you all. We have some really good programs, including talks like this one. We have conversation clubs, entrepreneurship programs, etc. So stay tuned to our social media properties, our Facebook page, which is super dynamic, Instagram, and our YouTube, which many of you are watching on. So we also have an English language show led by the ever popular Salman every other Tuesday, and then alumni talks on Sundays at 4. But you did not sign into this talk to hear me speak. We have two very esteemed guests right now. We have Ambassador John Derocher. He's been here as the U.S. Ambassador to Algeria since 2017. He spent much of his career in the Arab world, in places like Baghdad, Cairo, Jerusalem. Before he became ambassador to Algeria, he was in charge of the State Department's office for the entire North Africa, so he knows this region well. And his wife, Karen Rose, is well known to so many of you, really needs no introduction. Over the last 3 years, you've come to know her as a technology consultant. She's a specialist in intranet infrastructure. She's an avid traveler, she's an athlete, and she's really just a wonderful social media influencer that you have come to know and love. So with that, Mr. Ambassador, Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you for some opening remarks. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Eric, everybody. Thanks a lot, Eric. It's great to be here. It's great to be able to talk to everybody. Of course, it's really unfortunate that the current situation means that we have to do this by video, and that unfortunately the ACCA is still closed and the embassy is still closed. But glad to be able to meet folks this way. Really happy to be able to do this. Karen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's great to be with everybody, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
And all Karen's been able to say to me for the past few days is she can't believe it's really been 3 years that we've been here, but it really 3 years next month, which is hard to believe.
I know, it's been amazing. It's really gone so quickly, and we've had such a wonderful time here, and it's really thanks to all the great Algerian people who have given us such a wonderful welcome wherever we've gone in the country. So thank you very much for your hospitality.
Great. So Mr. Ambassador, Karen, could you reflect on the last 3 years? What have been some of your favorite experiences that you've had?
Well, you know, I've really mostly been thinking, like everyone else, for the past 5 months or so, 6 months, we've been very much stuck at home, which has been very frustrating. What I think I can speak for Karen when I say that, you know, what we've really enjoyed the most is our ability to travel around Algeria. I think we've been to, I don't know, 24 or so wilayas. We're kind of a little rough on the count, but I think that's about half. We really wanted to do quite a few more. And it just, with the pandemic, it just became really difficult. But I mean, even though I realized it before I came, it is really such an extraordinarily diverse country. And you have mountains, and you have deserts, and you have the shore, and you have history. And it's even if we'd had all the time, even if it hadn't been for the pandemic, I don't think we would have been able to see everything we wanted to see. There are some places that we've only been able to visit once that we would like to visit 10 times. So that's been great. I mean, I love Alger. It's a great town. Love being here, but really love getting out and seeing what there is to see. The only real downside has been this past period where, like everybody, we've been stuck here, haven't been able to get out, haven't been able to see people. And that's been really frustrating, because Karen talked about the great hospitality that we've had here. It's been really, everybody's been really great to us wherever we've gone. And it's been not being able to get out and see people. That's been the biggest frustration.
Yeah, and I would have to say for me, of course, all of the travel, but I've really enjoyed my time interacting with Algeria's young people. As you mentioned, Eric, my professional expertise is in technology, and I've had a great time interacting with young people that are in tech, whether it's at hackathons, whether it is talking to women in technology, and also, you know, much broader interacting with the youth. I had an opportunity to be in a program that helps kids plant trees for the environment. You know, and even just participating in things like Wikistage Annaba and Wikistage Algiers. A real opportunity to talk to the tremendous talent that's in Algeria. It's always really impressive, and those have been some of my fondest memories.
Great, thank you. So the questions are really rolling in. We have quite a few folks online. And first and foremost, we have some questions about the consular section, when it's going to reopen, when visa operations are going to resume. So that's one. And then second, DZ Hamid has a question that I really liked. Which city impressed you the most in Algeria and why? So if you could just maybe take those two questions, and then I'll throw more your way. So over to you.
Well, on the visa section, the consular question, the consular section, we do want to answer those questions. I'll talk about that a bit more later in the call before we wrap up. But so we certainly understand that's of concern to a lot of people. We've been getting a lot of questions, and we certainly understand why. Of course, I'll just say up top, and I'll return to this a little bit later. Of course, our highest priority has to be safety of all the Algerians who want to come to see us, safety of all of our colleagues at the embassy. So that's how we have to approach this question on reopening. And so, you know, that remains challenging, and I'll talk about that a bit more before we wrap up. You know, best city, I hesitate to pick a best city. They're also different. I'm going to do the diplomatic thing and dodge the question and not pick one. Tamanrasset was fascinating. It's a fascinating place. The Hogar Mountains are absolutely beautiful. The only thing I would say is to our Algerian friends is that, you know, the wonderful people we met down there, their biggest message to us was to tell more Algerians to come down south to see them, which I would strongly encourage you to do. You have an extraordinary heritage, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's really one of the most breathtaking things I've seen anywhere in the world. But I mean, I don't pick favorites. I like Alger, Constantine, Oran, Tlemcen. You know, every place has offered something a little bit different, and it's been really terrific. I know you took your mother to Tlemcen and had a great trip. I don't know if you want to talk about your favorite places.
Yeah, so again, it's really hard, but some of the places that are really special for me are where I've gone with family. So Tlemcen, I had the opportunity not only to go there with my husband, but also to take my mother there. And it's a wonderful place for tourism. We had family in, and we went to Timimoun, which of course is a very, very special place. Tamanrasset, as my husband said. I also really enjoyed my trip to Annaba. And I got taken around by some friends in Annaba to see all of the things that the region has to offer. So, you know, there's really something wonderful in every part of Algeria. It's almost like saying, you know, can you pick a favorite flower? You know, they're all so beautiful in their own way. How do you do that? So that's kind of like Algerian cities. They're like flowers. They're beautiful in their own way.
I love it. I love it. That's a great analogy. Wonderful. So we have a question from Mohammed Amin. And this is specifically for you, Karen. So I'll let you start. But Ambassador, if you want to jump in and answer, you are more than welcome.
I have a feeling, Eric, we're going to be getting a lot of those. That's just my guess.
Nice. So for Karen, Madame Karen, could you share with us your best and worst experience in Algeria, and one that you will never forget? So answer that as you like.
Okay, hi Mohammed. Thank you for your question. So as I mentioned, I think overall my best experiences have been with, with the Algerian youth and Algerian young people. But for one single experience, I mean, it had to be the Africa Cup. In addition to following the whole match, when the cup came to Algiers, I actually went down to Premier May to watch the bus and the cup come by. And I stood outside for 4 hours at Premier May waiting in the mobs of people. I mean, it was tremendous. And it was funny because not many people really recognized who I was, I guess maybe because I was wearing sunglasses. But it was great to see all the people out on the street, to have such a pride, not only in the football team, but pride in being Algerian and pride in Algeria. And it was a really overwhelming atmosphere. And I have to say, I really liked also seeing that there were a number of families. There were a number of mothers with their kids and their daughters down there too. And as being a woman that's interested in sports and an athlete myself, I thought that was great. I haven't had too many sad experiences in Algeria, but one that was very frustrating has been driving. I prefer to drive myself in Algiers. I prefer not to take a car with a driver. I prefer to get in my car and drive myself. And when I first came, I learned very quickly that Google Maps and Apple Maps and Waze doesn't always get you to the right location. So I spent a lot of time sort of circling around the streets of Algiers lost, but I always managed to find my way. So that was probably the most, maybe frustrating experience was the driving.
And I don't know, maybe it might have been also frustrating for our Algerian friends when you were driving. I don't know. Leave that judgment to them. I would have to say I haven't really had a bad experience here. It's really just been, like I said before, it's been getting, just these past few months when we haven't been able to get out. That's been the only thing that's been really frustrating. Obviously, you can see behind us, we have a beautiful house. It's a very nice, we really can't complain about that. But not being able to get out and see people has been kind of frustrating. On the positive side, I got to say the football was a lot of fun. The Africa Cup was a lot of fun. It was really fun to be here during that. Some people know that I grew up in an Olympic town in the United States. We had the Olympics in my hometown when I was in the United States. And the United States during that Olympic won some pretty big events. And the atmosphere here during the Africa Cup very much took me back to that time when I was a kid. And that was really a blast. I enjoyed that.
That's great. A number of users are noticing the cats behind you.
Dear.
A beer and a user named Best Song wanted to know the names of the cats.
Yeah, so our cats are named after two cartoon characters in the United States. We have two, Boris and Natasha. This is Boris. And I don't know.
Natasha has disappeared.
Natasha has disappeared, but their names are Boris and Natasha after two cartoon characters.
Great. That's fun. So, Ambassador, I have a question for you from Salim. He asks, how can Algeria become an influential country, and how is it an influential country? Maybe you could take that one on, Mr. Ambassador.
Sure. Well, I think Algeria already is an influential country. Certainly, even before I came here, when I was working in Washington on issues in this region, it was very clear that Algeria's voice was very much a respected voice in the region, in international fora. So I don't think that Algeria needs to work to become a respected country. I think it already is one. I think there's a lot of admiration for the positive role that Algeria tries to play in the region. I think people have a lot of respect for that. And I think Algeria is embarking on a very interesting new era. And I think it really can, and probably over time, come to play an even more potent role in the region. We obviously have a lot in common. We share a lot of concerns with Algeria about the stability of the region, how to bring stability to the region, how to build up the economies of the region, and how to build up our commercial ties. So that's something we work on a lot. But I already knew, I was, again, as you mentioned at the beginning, Eric, I worked on this region before I came out here, so I was already very familiar. And Algeria's voice is very much one that's listened to in the region, on the continent, in places like the UN and so on. And I think that's really a testimony for Algeria's policies in the region and Algeria's leadership.
Thank you for that. So next question is about tourism. Karen, I'm going to let you take this one on, as you've been all over this country. Could you reflect on tourism? This is Ahmed. He asks, do you agree that tourist sites in Algeria are more authentic and can attract more tourists? Could you take that one on, Karen? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Algeria is a really amazing place, I think, for tourism, and it has a lot of things to attract people. One of which, of course, is all of the historic sites. Algeria has been a witness to many, many phases of history. The entire history of the Mediterranean and the entire history of early civilization is right here in Algeria. Whether it's Roman ruins, there's Byzantine ruins, there's Phoenician ruins, of course, there's wonderful Berber ruins here, Ottoman, any phase of history, and you can find it here. It does have some of the world's best examples of certain types of architecture. For example, Timgad is one of the world's best examples of Roman grid architecture in the entire world. And again, the Berber monuments here, the mausoleums are amazing and like nowhere else. So I do think that Algeria, especially in historical monuments, offers something very different and very unique in the diversity. And of course, the natural beauty of Algeria as well, whether it's Tamanrasset, whether it's the Sahara, whether it's the coast. Algeria really has a compelling package for tourism.
Great. Excellent. So a few questions about food. Ali Taibe, and then also Mohammed Madrid asked, what is your favorite Algerian meal? So maybe if you both could take that on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my favorite is shakshuka, the one that's made with the pasta. And I know there's many different kinds, so I tend to I like two kinds especially. I like the kinds that are spicy, that you can find a little further south. And then I had a really great one in Annaba that instead of big pieces of the pasta, they were little tiny little pieces, almost like little squares. And it was excellent. So I love shakshuka. You can find something, a little different regional variation everywhere, and it's one of the reasons why I like the dish so much. Yeah,
I would have to second that. I love the shakshuka, and I have to say it's been really a treat because Eric, you'll understand. Finding this kind of cuisine back in the States isn't always that simple. Which is really too bad. We think that, I don't know, maybe there's a market in the restaurant scene back in the States for more cuisine from here, but we've been really knocked out about how proud people are of the food they present, how each region has its little specialty. And I mean, it's a big country and everybody is very proud of their particular part of it. So you can't pick a favorite cuisine here any more than you can pick a favorite city, because you may make one friend, but then you'll make 10 enemies. And so, you've got to be you've got to be really careful, but it's really been a delight. It's really something Algerians should be proud of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So we have a question about entrepreneurship that I'll direct to you, Ambassador and Karen, if you want to jump in. Username successful369 Tesla. That's a unique username. Says, I'm an entrepreneur And I would like to know if there is any program or workshop in this field. Maybe if you could just reflect on entrepreneurship more broadly, and then also on what the U.S. Embassy has done in this field. Over to you, Ambassador.
Sure. That's a very good username. Be ambitious. Describe your success and you will get there. I mean, we've been really impressed by the creativity of Algerian young people, their ability to find new little markets, to find places in the market nobody else is serving. We've met, not just here in Algiers, but in our travels throughout the country, we've met, you know, a lot of terrific young people who are trying to make a difference. Sometimes it's through commercial entrepreneurship and starting two businesses. Sometimes it's more social entrepreneurship and things like the environment, which is great. We try to do our own little programs at the embassy to encourage this. You can certainly find out about them through the ACCA. You know, we try to bring speakers here when we can. And again, it's been a little difficult during the current environment to talk about the business environment. And certainly a large part of our conversations with the Algerian government about our economic relationship is looking for ways that U.S. and Algerian businesses can support each other, can find partnerships together, and find creative ways to do business models, to find financing, and so on. I really think that Algerian young people are really a tool for growth that really is yet to be unleashed. And I really think as Algeria looks to diversify beyond hydrocarbons, looks to build a more rounded, complete economy, I really think, you know, our experience has certainly shown us that it's Algerian young people who will be able to lead that charge.
Great. So to stay on business and trade and the economy, I'm going to throw two questions your way, and then you can address them both. First, Pacino says, why aren't there any multinational or American companies here in Algeria, like McDonald's, Starbucks, etc.? And then Benziu says, what can we do as a country to make progress in developing ourselves in technology or other fields? The USA is a great example. So if you could address both those questions, that would be great. Over to you.
Well, the first one, there are big American multinationals here, of course. Now, obviously, the oil sector is where you find most of them, and they've been here for a long time. That's, you know, that's not a surprise. But we have other companies in pharmaceutical and healthcare and in technology. They're here. They're often not, you know, you listed off a lot of public-facing businesses like Starbucks and so on. Obviously, there's a lot of companies out there in different sectors whose signs you might not see on the street corner, but that doesn't mean they're not here. They certainly are here. Of course, we did see, since our arrival here, we saw the opening of the first American restaurant franchise in Algeria, Pizza Hut. They have had a good experience. Now, of course, Pizza Hut, like everybody else, I feel like I'm saying this all the time, but you know, because of the pandemic, it's difficult for everyone, and that is really kind of slowing down, you know, new business startups. But Pizza Hut has done very well, and I think that others are looking at that model. Now, the second, I think, to get to the second question, I think that one thing in my 3 years here I've noticed is, like I said a minute ago, there's a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit here. There's tremendous creativity. And of course, Algerians are very well educated, and there's you know, tremendous education across different disciplines, science and engineering, and so on. What I think the United States has been able to do that other countries try to model is finding that marriage between education and business, finding ways to get the bright young people, to get the connections between universities and the private sector, so the companies can find the bright young people at the universities with the bright ideas. And that's how you create that Silicon Valley effect. You need a good idea, and then you need experts to back it up. And I think that's you know, really something that's worth Algeria exploring more. I mean, you have a lot of tech experience, Karen, if you want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's really important is becoming integrated with the international community or international group of experts within your sector. So for example, the internet industry is really all about global cooperation, and it's technical people cooperating with technical people and sharing information about what the new advances are in technology, how to implement them, sharing their success stories and sharing together their failures. So, you know, whether it is something like technology or in any other science discipline, you know, science and research, again, they are inherently, they advance through global interaction and global cooperation among experts. So, you know, I would say whatever your field is, look to see if you can belong, if you can join some group. For example, if you're an engineer, there's the IEEE, which is the International Association for Electrical and Electronics Engineers. If you're an internet person, there's groups like the Internet Society. And again, if you're in pretty much any field, there's probably a global association out there that you can belong to, where you can get global information about your specialty and field. And of course, with the internet itself, it makes this so much easier. So the other thing that I would say is, of course, you know, English is the language that is used internationally in a lot of these forums. So for everybody out there studying English, you know, keep going, because it is really helpful when you're doing international discussions and exchanges.
To stay on that, because a question just came in on English language, so that's a great segue. Amel says, would you address English students in Algeria? Tell us, where can we find jobs and where we can practice our English? So I think that's an appropriate question at this point.
Eric, I hesitate to answer this question for you because you'll just have to correct me. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to do whatever we can to help people work on their English. Back before the pandemic, of course, we had a lot of young people who would come to the ACCA for our programs, which was a great place to work on your English. Obviously, you know, our colleagues there are trying to keep that going virtually, which is a bit more difficult, but it's still worthwhile. We have the American corners at various Algerian universities around the country that have a lot of great resources for studying English, for learning how to move on with your education in English. I mean, as far as finding jobs, I mean, I know that good English language skills are very much in demand with the business community. We hear about it a lot here. Businesses recognize that they need a staff that can work internationally in English if they're able to succeed. So if you have those skills, I think that's something you can highlight. If you've got some technical talent and you've got good English, I think the companies will find you. But please do keep in touch through our website and our Facebook page with the ACCA and with the American Corners. That's the most direct way we have at the embassy to help out with English.
Thank you. So to stay on language, a few questions have come in about Arabic language. Your experience with Arabic language here. Best Song is requesting if either of you is comfortable to hear a little bit of Arabic, maybe a greeting. And then Shishan asks, have you learned any Algerian words? So Karen, maybe do you want to start with a little Arabic if you're comfortable?
So yeah, so اسمي كارن أنا أتكلم عربي شوية بس. Algerian words. Well, one of the things I learned is so I know in standard Arabic, you know, counting is واحد, اثنين, ثلاثة, أربعة, خمسة. But in Algeria, two is juj, right? It's juj, is that right? Yeah, so I know that. And what else? I mean, I understand a little bit of Arabic, but as anybody who learns a foreign language knows, speaking is always the hardest part. Understanding is easy. And when I came here, for example, I joined a gym and all of the classes were in Arabic. But, you know, I learned that, you know, if I can just put 2 and 2 together, they say this and everybody does this, then I understand. So my comprehension is a lot better than my speaking, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I studied Arabic a bit many years ago, but I really don't, I really regret that I haven't been able to keep it up as much as I would like to. It's really a challenge. It has been somewhat reassuring to me during my time here that when I hear Fusha, I can understand some of it. I can follow it. I have to say, frankly, Deroser is still a bit more of a mystery to me. It's really a challenge, but it's a very expressive language. Certainly, I mean, I heard many creative expressions at the football match from both sides fans. That it's probably good that I don't remember them exactly. I probably shouldn't repeat them. And since it is my role to improve U.S.-Algerian relations, I won't sing because nothing of my singing would do anything to improve relations. I'm happy to hear others, but in the cause of international harmony, I will not sing myself.
Great. We've received a few questions about educational ties between the United States and Algeria. One came in early on about your meeting with the Minister of Higher Education. And then another just came in about creating an American university in Algeria, similar to the AUC, the American University in Cairo, or the AUB, American University in Beirut. So sort of maybe just more broadly, if you could talk a little bit about educational links, ties between the United States, and take it from there. Over.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we would certainly like to see closer educational ties between our two countries. We'd like to see more Algerian university students in the US. And we'd like to see more American students here. To a certain extent, this gets back to the English language question we discussed earlier. You know, obviously one of the barriers to that has been the language issue. And I think that does have an impact. We have also worked with the Ministry of Higher Education to make it easier for those who study in the United States to get those diplomas recognized and accredited back here in Algeria, because of course there's not much point in pursuing a degree that you can't take home with you and use. So that's the kind of thing we talk about with the ministry. We've been talking with the ministry about the Fulbright program. We've been talking with the ministry about finding ways that we can contribute to the Algerian government's efforts to spread English language education. This is the kind of stuff we try to do day to day. We feel we have really good partners there. They've been very positive about working with us, and I'm very optimistic about that. The American universities, that's a more complicated question, and I won't try to go into it in great detail here. It's pretty complex. Of course, we would love to see an American university here. There's a lot involved in starting a university like that. One of the main things, of course, is that people need to understand that these are not government universities. These are private universities, these American universities that you see in the region. I think that we would certainly be supportive if there was a group that wanted to start such a university. It's a big challenge. I think they bring great value. I served in Cairo for a number of years, worked a great deal with the American University in Cairo. It's a wonderful institution. But I think we have a lot of other ways we can build up the academic relationship in the ways that I've just talked about. And there are ways that we can get more Algerians to the US and more Americans here that don't require, you know, all the time and effort that it would take to start a separate university. I also should say that I have had the opportunity to meet some terrific Algerians who are in the US, long-term Algerian-American academics who teach at US universities. They come back here often in the summers, of course, not this summer, but under ordinary times they come back and they do some seminars at Algerian universities. So there is a pool of academics in the United States of Algerian heritage who really want to do more to build those bridges too. I've been very lucky to meet them, and they're a very inspirational group of people. And these are the kind of people that we'll work with going forward to try to build those bridges.
Thank you. Karen, any thoughts on educational links? You've done so much with young people in Algeria. I know you've had the chance to visit Algerian students in the United States. Any reflections on how we can build educational ties between our two peoples?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Algerian students are really bright, and I have been incredibly impressed in my interactions with Algerian university students and even younger and even grade school kids at how bright and smart they are. Of course, again, links with the United States. English is something that's really important to build up ties with the US. And this is something that even young kids, can start. So I don't think we should think about the educational pathway and ties just at the university level, but what can be done at the ground up to help prepare kids for those international exchanges. And English is a great part of that. And then of course, trying to become involved in, again, student groups or international clubs or international groups of expertise is a great way to sort of meet people all over the world, whether it's in the US or elsewhere, and exchange information. And of course, that increase in knowledge coming from your peers, your university peers around the world, or your professional peers are a great way to enhance education going forward.
Great. If you are just joining us, we are live with Ambassador John Deroser, U.S. Ambassador to Algeria, and his wife, Karen Rose, a technology consultant here. So please keep the questions coming. It is great to see all of the questions and comments. Thank you for that. I know we are getting some questions about consular issues, and the ambassador said that he was going to address that at the end of the hour, so stay tuned for that. We have received some questions kind of reflecting on your career in life more broadly. So one question, have you ever served in another Arab country is one. And then how do you approach life when you enter a new country, considering you've moved so much as a diplomat? How do you adjust? How do you deal with cultural shock? So Ambassador, if you could start, and then Karen, I'd be interested in your thoughts about culture shock more generally.
Yeah, both of us have lived a fair bit overseas, and different places, sometimes together, sometimes not. I spent a number of years in Egypt. I was in Iraq for a couple of years. I worked a lot in the West Bank for a number of years. It's, all of these places are very, very different. I really enjoyed them all. They all offered something different. I did not necessarily at the beginning plan for my career to focus on the Arab world, but I'm very glad that it did. It's been really rewarding. Cairo's a great city. I've really enjoyed it. Algiers is a great city. They're different places, but they have different things to offer. Adjusting everywhere you go, well, that's kind of something that it's always, you always have to adjust, but I enjoy it. I mean, I think that the kind of people who get into this business, we get into this business precisely for the opportunity to travel the world, to see new cultures. You've got to have a little bit of a sense of adventure. You've got to be ready to go a little outside your comfort zone. You really got to be willing to try something new and to be open-minded. Generally, I found that pretty rewarding. I have found something wonderful in every place I've ever gone. I've been on I don't know how many different continents and how many different cultures. But you just have to realize that particularly for those first few weeks, you're going to get a lot of thrown at you that's new. That's great. You've got to embrace it and you've got to enjoy it. And I certainly have. I know Karen has. Karen has a lot of experiences of her own. As you all have noticed, we've been out and about in Algeria together a great deal, but she's also been out and about on her own not only in Algeria and elsewhere. I'm sure you've got a lot of experiences to share.
Yeah, so my husband and I, we didn't get married. We didn't meet and get married until we were quite a bit older. So we both had professional careers before we met, and we got married. So I think this is the first time that I've been with my husband for his entire posting. So Algeria is a first for me in that sense. I've had the opportunity to travel all around the world for my previous job. I lived in Australia for a time as well, Egypt for a time, and New Zealand for a time. One of the things that I think is really important is making sure you find what is enjoyable about whatever culture you're going to interact with. So my mother kind of has a saying that is, you know, if there's a bunch of people doing something and they're all having a good time, well, there must be something enjoyable about it. So I think some people, when they travel, they say, well, or when they meet other cultures, they're going to say, you know, I'm going to wait to see if I like this. I'm not sure. I'm going to see if I like it. That's the wrong way to go about it. You have to turn it around and say, I'm going to like this. All of these people are liking this. And then it's just about finding out why, you know, finding out why something is so enjoyable. So I think if you go with that attitude that everybody around the world has something to offer, every country, every person has something to offer, and accept that and then enjoy it along the way, you'll do really well. But I have one thing, and maybe the viewers can help me. There's one thing I have not quite figured out what the enjoyable part is, and it's an Algerian dish called bakbouka with the lamb stomach, and it's eaten around Eid, and it's with the stomach. It's kind of like the soup bakbouka. I've had bakbouka 4 times, and each time I look and I say, everybody's enjoying this. So I'm going to find out and enjoy it too. But I haven't gotten there yet. But maybe the 5th time, I'll have to try it for a 5th time before I go, and I think I'll find it.
Well, I think you get bonus points for trying it 4 times. So we'll see if we can send some over to the CMR for the 5th time. To stay with you, Karen, getting some questions about sports cooperation, and specifically about basketball. And could you reflect on your experience with basketball and then also you know, sports development?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to participate in some of the activities that the U.S. Embassy supported with basketball, Bucket and a Dream. One of the great things about sports and the connection to the United States is that many of our universities in the United States offer scholarships for students to play sports at the university and study. So in the United States, most of our great athletes actually come through the university system. And universities are always on the hunt for global talent that they can bring in. So excelling and participating in sports it also has a potential academic component as well when it comes to the United States. You know, I love sports of all types. You know, myself, I love boxing. Boxing is probably my favorite. And I also do weightlifting and CrossFit. And I had an opportunity here to meet some women fencers as well. And Algeria has some of the best young fencing talent, I think, anywhere in the world. So, you know, it's really all about supporting kids in their dreams. And again, whether they're girls or whether they're boys, in their dreams of excellence. And, you know, and again, you know, if people are interested in studying in the United States, sports and athletics could be a way to do that as well.
Great. To turn to you, Mr. Ambassador, we are getting some questions about consular issues. And so When is the consular section going to reopen? When will visa operations resume? If you could just address that.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that question. You know, we knew people would be joining throughout the hour. We knew how important it is. We've been getting a lot of inquiries from a lot of folks for a while about this. We understand how challenging the situation is for everyone. And we, you know, I want to tell you as much as I can. However, I do have to be very clear, as I said briefly at the beginning, our number one, our most important element in all of this when we approach it is safety. The safety of our colleagues here at the embassy, the safety of the people who visit us at the embassy. That has been our guiding principle, not only here, but at every U.S. embassy around the world during this crisis. And we have to be very cautious, and we are being very cautious. I will be very blunt also and say that our embassy here has not been untouched by the virus. We have had colleagues who have suffered from the virus. We, of course, are not immune from it. My greatest responsibility as ambassador is to protect my colleagues and protect the people who visit us. And so we have been keeping our staffing at the embassy to an absolute minimum. People who can work from home are working from home. People who have to come into the embassy, they come in for only very brief periods. We have very few people at the embassy each day. We are still closed to the public. And the challenge, of course, is for the issues that you all are concerned about, the way that we most interact with the public at the embassy is in two ways. That's in the consular section on visa issues, and that's, of course, at the ACCA. Well, as you know, both of those things involve taking significant numbers of people and putting them together in small spaces, sometimes for extended periods of time. Of course, in the current environment, that is very risky behavior. We certainly support our government, the Algerian government's guidelines for health and safety, for social distancing, and all that sort of thing. So we will not be able to reopen those kinds of activities until the larger health environment permits it. I want to be honest with people because I know that this is a very difficult time. You know, we do not expect to be able to reopen the embassy to these services soon. We will open the embassy to these services when we can do it safely. We do not make any predictions on when that might be. But as you know, the situation with COVID in so much of the world, including, of course, in the United States, remains very challenging. And we have to put safety first. We realize that this pandemic has caused extraordinary hardship for people all over the world, people here in Algeria, people in countries all over the world, people separated from family members. We have put a lot of effort over the past months into returning American citizens here back to the United States. As you know, the Algerian government has been repatriating its citizens from the United States. We have been helping with that. That's really been our priority. We know that this has had a very, very difficult impact on our diversity visa candidates, the people who are pursuing the diversity visas to the United States. And again, I want to be very honest with people. This is a difficult time. The virus is really very much challenging us. It is challenging our embassies all over the world. We have very strict guidelines before we can reopen to the public and start bringing large numbers of people back into our offices, back into our waiting rooms. And so it is hard to ask people for patience during a time like this. We know in the case of the diversity visa, there are people who have made plans. There are people who have made arrangements. Everything has been put on hold. And we know those people are really struggling. And we will certainly get back to those operations when we can, but we won't be able to do it until it's safe. And right now, we are just not in that situation.
Good. Thank you. So we spent a lot of time reflecting on your time in Algeria the last three years. Could you also look forward? What do you think the future for Algerian-American relations holds? Where do you see this country going? If you could just take a moment to reflect on the future, I think that would be of interest to our viewers.
I'm very optimistic. I really have picked up in my conversations with the new government, a real desire to build a stronger bilateral relationship. I can say as well that I've had a lot of conversations by video conference with groups back in the United States, business people and so on, who are very interested. They're very frustrated that they can't travel. They're very interested in exploring opportunities here. We have noticed, Karen has certainly talked about this, when we go out, when we see young people, how much interest we find among them in building a deeper relationship with the US. So really, a lot of this is very much in your hands. We will work on that to help as much as we can. Like I said, I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot that we can do together. It won't be, one of the things about our business that's both good and bad is that we always move on. We don't stay anywhere forever. We move on and we take on new challenges and new experiences. That's one of the reasons I love this job so much. So a lot of this new progress will take place after Karen and I have moved on. But I'm very confident that it will take place. I think the spirit is right on both sides. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think we've all been hampered this past year by, of course, the pandemic. And I think we would be in a different place, frankly, today if it weren't for the pandemic. And so I regret that. But it doesn't distract me from the long-term potential, which I think is great. Karen and I may not be here for a lot of that, but we will certainly be watching for it. And we will certainly be pushing American tourists towards Algeria. We will certainly be, when we are back home, pushing business people to explore here. We've had an extraordinary time. It's a fascinating place. We recommend it to everyone that we can encourage to come here. And I think the future is really bright. So I'm really very positive about it. It is hard to see sometimes now, but we will reach a time when we can put this pandemic behind us and really start to build on things. And it's hard waiting for that day. But when that day comes, I think there's a great deal that we're going to be able to do.
Well said. Karen, could you reflect as well on that same question? You've done so much work with Algerian youth. You've seen so much of this country. What do you think the future holds for Algerian-American relations and Algerian youth for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've always been impressed in my interactions with Algerian young people, whether it's university students, whether it's young grade school students. There is a tremendous amount of talent here. And the more that, and the other thing that I've seen, which I think will very much help Algerian youth in going forward, is the fact that Algerian youth like to work together. Some of the best events that I have been to haven't been put on by adults. They've been put on by Algerian youth themselves, university students, or university students putting on programs for grade school students. And I think if Algeria continues in this spirit, continues in the spirit of reaching out internationally, in the spirit of continuing education, continuing to learn English, and continuing to help each other towards excellence, I think the future is absolutely bright for this country.
Thank you. I want to give you the final word, but before I do so, I just wanted to talk about our upcoming programming on this channel. So on August 12th, we're going to have a talk on the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we have an expert who will be dialing in from Detroit. He's a lawyer and an expert in this issue. And so the Americans with Disabilities Act was a sweeping piece of legislation that increased access and awareness for people with disabilities. So that's August 12th, that's next week on Wednesday. And then on August 19th, Naziha from our Human Resources section is going to be giving a talk about jobs at the U.S. Embassy. I know that's a very common inquiry about how to come work with us at the embassy. And so she is gonna be giving a talk there. So to turn it over to you for a final word, Mr. Ambassador and Karen, what message would you like to leave? You've talked to our American spaces, our corners, many different times. Do you have any final words to share with them? And I will just leave it open-ended at that. Karen, why don't we start with you, and then let the ambassador have the final word.
Well, the first is, of course, again, thank you. And we just want to express our gratitude for the hospitality, for the welcome that we have received here in Algeria. I think Algerians have a lot to be proud of. Algeria has a beautiful country. Algeria has beautiful culture. Algeria has beautiful people. It's a great place. So, I just want to say, continue with your pride of being Algerians, continue with your spirit of striving for more. And, we definitely look forward to coming to Algeria again after our time here and seeing how the relationship between our countries grow.
I just, briefly for one moment, I want to turn back just to the question of a few minutes ago and just stress again, we know that there are a lot of people out there, a lot of people on this call suffering because we have to be closed because of the pandemic. And we understand the hardship that is causing for people. We do understand that. We've been getting your messages. I've been getting your messages. We will work to restore our normal services when we can, but we are also determined to take the safety of our colleagues and of our visitors very, very seriously. So that is going to be a challenge to do, but we do understand the hardship that you're suffering, and we hope that we will be able to address it as soon as the conditions permit. More broadly, I just want to thank everyone. Karen and I are coming to the end of our assignment here in Algeria. It's been absolutely spectacular. I was confident that it would be. I had the opportunity to visit Algeria a number of times before we were assigned here, and I always found it a very fascinating place. I'm very optimistic for the future of Algeria. You can't meet young Algerians and even not so young Algerians and not be very encouraged. There is a great deal of energy. There's a great deal of pride and creativity here. I feel that Algeria is moving into a new phase in its future, and I think that's very exciting. Again, I'm kind of disappointed that we won't maybe be here to see all of it, but it's been very interesting to be here at the beginning of it. And you can't meet the kind of people that we have met. You can't have the kind of interactions with folks all over the country that we've had and be anything but optimistic. It is, it's an extraordinary place. It's been a real blessing for us to be here. It will certainly be in our hearts forever. We certainly enjoy everything Algeria has to offer, and we'll be back when we can, because we haven't been able to see as much as we wanted to. There's still a lot more to see. But again, we just want to say thank you to everyone. Everyone has just been absolutely gracious and kind, and it's been a really terrific time for us.
Mr. Ambassador, Karen, thank you for joining us today. It has been a pleasure to speak with you. Everyone else, thank you for logging in, for the wonderful questions, for the cherished interaction. And on that, if everyone could continue that interaction on our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter, we really value all of the comments, questions, likes and shares that we get. So again, Mr. Ambassador, Karen, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again.